Hi, I'm Lisa Hayden with Channel 6 Central Kentucky TV, community focus on Washington County. And today I'm delighted to have as our guest John Boyd Reed from Springfield, who is with Aflac Insurance.
Correct.
And also is the former owner and operator of Reed's Grocery that everybody in Springfield remembers.
Mm-hmm.
I guess unless they are, what year did you close, John?
In 2005.
2005.
Right.
Unless they were born after that.
Yes, it's kind of unique to talk to somebody about it because there are some people that don't even know that Communicare that is existing there now was a grocery store.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it was a wonderful thing to have a grocery store in the heart of downtown,
Mm-hmm.
John Boyd. And it was a sad day when it closed in 2005. I can't believe that's been
Again,
10, 50, 20, almost
12
almost 15 years.
12 years.
12 years.
This actually this August 31st it will be 12 years. I mean,
Wow.
I'm sorry, 13 years.
Wow.
13 years, 2005 to 2018.
Well, before we talk about insurance, which of course, I wanted to hear a little bit about. Everybody always needs insurance, and I have a thing about that, making sure you're protected.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I want, let's go back and talk about the grocery a little bit, about Reed's Grocery.
Okay. Well, as you and I were speaking just the other day, to my recollect, my grandfather Reed started the business in 1937, and he and another gentleman, which cannot remember his name, but they had a mill out in the Poortown area, and that's where they kind of had a huckster route. And a huckster route is basically, which was a little type of truck that the meal that they were producing, they went to people's homes and bartered for something that they needed to be able to bring back to the store. So the store, to my recollect, and that's information from my dad, is where Sims and Montgomery is located today, is where my grandfather started the grocery business with another gentleman, and I apologize for not remembering that name. But the huckster route was part of the mill down in Poortown, which is outside of Lincoln Park. And when they had the opportunity of producing their meal, they went to homes, they bartered for products such as eggs, chickens, and they brought it back to the store, and then they sold it. So there was never any money as far as transferred when they traded for meal for eggs, and then it was brought back to the store. So I always thought that was a very interesting, information that my dad passed along to me. In 1937, again, as I said before, they opened up the grocery store. My grandfather passed away when he was 42, and if I'm not mistaken, I think it was in the late 40s is when he did that. And my uncle.
Now, what was his name?
His name was James Davison Reed Sr.
Born and raised in Washington County?
Yes, to my recollect from what information's been given to me. And then my grandmother Reed, as we were speaking the other day, that my grandmother Reed and my grandfather Reed were both in the hospital at the same time with pneumonia back in the middle 40s or a little bit later 40s. And they predicted that my grandmother would pass because her pneumonia was so bad, and my grandfather would be able to, as far as get by with his and get better. Well, anyway, my grandfather died, and my grandmother survived, and she ended up living to be 85, 86 years of age. And my father, at the time of his father's death, he was 14 years old. And then, as far as
was he the oldest?
No.
Or the only?
James Davison Reed Jr., which everyone knew as Fanny.
Of course.
And so they had 4 in their family, which was Fanny, that most people would, as far as know that name, and then it was Connor, which he was a military man, so he left Washington County when he was like 17 years of age and stayed in the military for 30 years. So he had like 4 or 5 children, and all of those individuals were born in different countries because he was in the Air Force. So he had children that were in different places and different locations and so on. So he actually made his home in Tampa, Florida, when they have a base there and everything. So he ended up living there with his wife Rose and their children. So then came Dad, which was Tom Duncan Reed, and then his sister, which a lot of people don't know this because when you lose your maiden name, you go by the name that you're married. But anyway, Mary McCann Salmon was their sister, which of course a lot of people, she worked with us for years and years, and a lot of people didn't even know that was my aunt. So that's the history of that family. And
she worked in the store at the counter, didn't she?
Yes, she was a cashier. And actually, she was the bookkeeper for a long time for Dad. She did the payroll and things like that. And this is where the computers came in to hand, to where doing the pencil and paper, we were able to do it from a computer standpoint. And that was in probably the early 90s when we started doing that from the computer standpoint. So she still was cashier, and that eliminated as far as the bookkeeping part of that end of it.
And she, of course, Miss Salmon, is still alive.
No, Miss Salmon. Miss Salmon's passed.
She did pass.
Yes, she has passed. She, if my recollect, she's been gone for at least, I want to say probably 4 years.
Yeah.
In that ballpark. But
I can see her house down there now on the
yes,
corner,
on the corner.
but that's where Ronnie.
That's right.
Yeah.
Where Ronnie lives now. But as far as the store, James Davison Jr. Is 10 years older than my dad, and so at the age of 24, he was actually running the store for my grandmother,
Fanny. Okay.
And so my dad ended up going into the service at that time for probably, I think, 3 years. And when he came back out, then it was a situation that they decided that they were going to go in together as partners, and of course buy their mother out. And that's when, of course, the store at the very beginning was called Reed's Brothers.
Oh, didn't know that.
Yes.
Okay.
And they pretty much went by Reed's Brothers for quite a while until
that would have been in the.
That would have been in the probably early 50s.
Okay.
I would say because in '48, I want to say, is when my grandfather passed away, and then my dad, of course, went to the service, came back out of the service. So I would say probably in the early 50s, mid 50s is when they ended up becoming Reed's Brothers and stuff. And then if I can't remember when, but as a lot of the older people would remember, it was Reed's Key Market
right.
in that stage. And then after the Reed's Key Market is when they moved from where the consignment shop is down here, right on this side of the street.
Okay.
Okay. And I think Dwight Wright owns
down here
that
on
building.
Main Street. That's the yeah.
And that was approximately about a 4,000 square foot building, 4,000 square foot building, and Dad and Fanny ended up buying the place where it's located today, and building in 1967. So they had it for that many years, and then I personally.
So it was down here on Main Street, next to the Opera House, for how many?
I'm going to say probably in the range of maybe 10 years.
Okay.
Again, from where Sims at Montgomery, I knew they were located from what Dad had told me. Then they moved to where the consignment shop is today, and they were there until '67, and then they built the existing building right now,
which is now Communicator.
Right, which is now Communicator.
Yeah.
But as far as me personally, I got involved when I came out of school in '76. Of course, I went to St. Catherine's and then went to Eastern, but I didn't graduate. So came back and in '76 went into the grocery business with my dad. And
now, had Fanny was Fanny
yes.
was still in it at that time.
Fanny was still in it at that time up until he ended up retiring. I want to say probably maybe '82 because I bought into the store in '83, and
so you bought in after Fanny retired.
Right.
I see.
Right.
I couldn't remember how that
so
was.
Fanny,
I can just think of your of your dad and Fanny, you know, always being in the store when I was, you know, in there.
Right.
And I think they both had their separate roles and
they did
things that they were doing.
Right.
And but it was always, you know, fun to have a conversation with them.
Yeah, they were again, like you said, they had two totally different personalities, you know, and like you said, that it worked for them for years because they were partners for years. And then when I bought into it, again, Fanny had already retired, and at that point in time, I bought Dad out in '87, and then I had it until 2005, and that's when I closed it.
Well, you know, I suppose, I mean, I know everybody misses a grocery downtown, and, you know, with all of these big markets opening, I'm sure competition got pretty stiff. People, I guess, were going out, you know.
Well, and
transportation was better, modes of transportation. These are things that happen to a lot of our small towns around the country.
Well, and unfortunate, you know, it's like anything that you involve yourself in, and with a small town like Springfield, again, probably, I'm trying to think, it was after I closed, I was dealing with a company out of Xenia, Ohio, which was Superfoods, and they were the largest independent grocery, as large as Walmart was. Now, people didn't know that because they didn't have their names on any of the stores, but they were servicing those stores. So as far as our buying power, we didn't have a problem competing with the big stores. We had a problem being the size that we were. You know, I was a 16,000 square foot store, and I was competing with a 100,000 square foot store that was down the road, and you couldn't do that. And unfortunate, you know, the hometown, carry your groceries out, you knew everybody. In that in itself started diminishing, and all of us, we want to save as much money as we possibly can. So we felt like going to the larger stores were going to save us money. But in the long run, what ends up happening is, you know, they have so many of these stores that they're able to go into certain areas and lower their pricing to be where it can put more stress on those little stores, and that's what it did over the years. But unfortunate, you don't have that anymore. There's only 2 independent stores that I know of, and one's still here in Springfield, and the other one's in Loretta. And at the time when I closed, there was over 18 independent stores that still existed, and so, you know, one by one has fallen off, and unfortunate. Because, you know, till this day, I still have people ask me, you know, do you miss it? And I said, well, of course I miss it. I said, I would be there today if I'd had the customers, the consistency of that, because that's what runs your business. And it was unfortunate that it happened. But, you know, on my end of it, you know, I realized that it was going on. It had been going on for at least 6 months, probably to a year. And I had to make a decision what I was going to do. And I was always taught, you know, you pay your bills, and that's what I decided to do. I paid my bills and I shut my door. And you know, and it's worked out good for me. I mean, I know for the community in itself, you know, unfortunate, you know, you still have 2 what we call independent grocery stores, but I don't consider the Save-A-Lots independent grocery stores because they're owned by a corporate company.
Right.
So the company that owns those have over 100 Save-A-Lots out there.
Yeah.
But they're not one independent store. But the one independent store, of course, is the IGA and also the Foodland down in Loretta. So you know, that's hard to consistently be on top of your game and try to do everything you possibly can to maintain a customer.
Yeah.
So you know, it's a hard business to be in. I can tell you that.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. But you know, I do see that we're getting back to, you know, community and your towns are trying to, you know, because our generation wants to be able to just walk to the store.
That's right.
You know?
That's right.
Or,
Exactly.
you know, we don't want to go too far.
No.
And it's nice when you have someone carry out your groceries.
That's right. Well, I think the biggest thing that we had an impact on was the larger store doesn't mean it was the best store. And going into the larger stores, you can ask, and nothing against employees, but this is the nature of the game was that you could go into a store and ask an employee where something was, and they had no idea where it was because the store's so big. So, you know, that was something that the smaller stores made a very positive point in helping their customer. So I tried to stress it because my father stressed it to me, is that you just don't tell somebody where it is, you go show them where it is.
Yeah.
And all those things that you try to do, it's been lost. And unfortunate, you know, the larger stores, you know, they're talking about 200 employees here and 300 employees there. And, you know, and not to say that that's an excuse, but numbers makes a difference in between how things are operating.
Yeah.
And so on our end of it, we had approximately 25 employees, probably had 10 to 12 full-time and then 12 to 10 part-time. But I always stress to them the importance of making sure that when the customer left, that they were satisfied with everything that was going on inside the store.
Well, here's what I find interesting on that, John Boyd. You've got these big stores and all of these employees, but you can't ever find anything, and there's no one there to help you find them.
That's correct.
And I don't know where they all are because you can't find them in the aisles.
Well, I always used to
like
say this.
you could at Reed's.
That's right. But I always used to say this: if someone, no matter what business that you're in, and if it didn't go the way you wanted it to go, then you made a choice. I'm either going to go back, and maybe it's different, and maybe they've corrected their problem, or I'm going to go somewhere else, and hopefully that company will take care of me. Well, the large stores, you don't have any competition anymore. So it's a matter of fact that you're going there, and all those things can happen to you, and you can be disgruntled, but on the same token, you're going to go back because you don't have a choice anymore.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like
that's a real disadvantage,
yes,
isn't it?
Yes.
Because of the lack of competition.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I'll just give you an example. I think the dollar stores, you've seen them pop up left and right, and because they're small, and people would rather go into the dollar stores knowing that they don't have everything to compare with the big stores, but they would rather go try to find it there because they're so used to, in our generation, they were so used to being able to walk in and find it instead of have to search for it.
Right.
So to me, that's where it's been effective for the dollar stores, that they haven't gotten any bigger. They've stayed the same size. They still operate the same way. And if you like it, this is what we have to offer. So.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I'd much rather go into the dollar store than go out of town. And yeah. So that's good. And so, and you, what about the fire in 2000?
Well, then in 1992 is when the fire occurred.
92. Okay.
And it was electrical fire. It happened in the back end of the store, and it burnt completely down. The walls were made of concrete block, and that the fire was contained up in the roof of it. And strange enough, you know, you don't realize these things until after they occur, but the ceiling got so hot with, as far as the iron rods that hold the roof up and everything, they got so hot that the sides of the building opened up and the ceiling caved in. And so everything in the store, of course, caught on fire after that occurred. So after that, then we ended up getting back in business actually about 11 months after that.
So you totally rebuilt.
We took it down to the ground. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but that building has a 10,000 square foot basement under it. And a gentleman that all the older generation would know is G.T. McCrae built that for Dad and Fanny. And so that was kind of a unique thing to have a 10,000, because the store in itself was a 10,000 square foot store with a 10,000 square foot basement under it. And of course they utilized it for their stock, putting everything down there. Had an old conveyor that shot it down the basement. You know, you put it on the conveyor, it went down the basement. If you wanted to bring it back up, you bring it back up. So it was a unique thing, but unfortunate because of the fire, it burned up too, you know. So I ended up enlarging the store to 16,000 square feet, and at that point in time, I was able to have a freestanding store, where the old store had columns in it, and a lot of people would never know where they were because they might have been in between shelving and things like this. But from an architectural standpoint, we were able to build it at least to 16,000 with freestanding. So there was no post or anything in the building, and that made it nice.
Wow. Well, I remember the fire, and that was very tragic, and I'm sure very devastating to you. And now your father, was he still in the business at that time?
In '92, Dad had already retired and everything. As far as he was helping, and of course when I say helping, he had, as he would ask me, he says, well, what do you want me to do? I said, I'd do what you've always done. Because, I mean, on his end of it, you know, he was always there in the morning, and he was always there in the evening. I mean, he, you know, having 7 children and stuff, you know, it was just his inherent behavior that he was going to be there all the time. So, of course, when I came in, it gave me an opportunity as far as to learn the managing part of it, and I couldn't have had a better teacher, because he was a great teacher. Not only was he a great father, but he was a great teacher. He was a great friend. And we got along great, you know. But we both of us knew that when you're in business, you're partners, and when you're home, you're father and son. And we always kept that relationship, you know, apart. So when the store ended up burning down,
and that's pretty unique.
It is.
Just by the way.
It is. It is.
That's hard for a lot of father-son relationships, or mother-daughters in business, or what, you know, to be able to separate those.
Right.
So
well,
that's pretty impressive.
I think Dad's biggest asset that he had, that he was a very good communicator and a very good listener. And so he always gave me an opportunity, as far as if I saw something that needed to be done, you know, we would talk about it. So from his standpoint, it was better to talk about it than to do it, and then I didn't like it or whatever, and then you get into a little ruckus. But that was the thing that he always indicated to me, is that, you know, if you can't communicate, then you can't get along.
Yeah.
You know, and that's, to me, was very important. And that's what I'm doing today.
Yeah.
You know.
So yeah, and now after you closed the store, you sold the building to Communicare, and they've been in it now for...
They have been in it approximately, I'm going to say, about 8 years, because I had the store for almost 5 years before I sold it.
Okay.
So I would say in the proximity of about 8 years.
And it looks really good.
Yeah, they did an excellent job.
Yeah.
Did an excellent job.
So, and then of course, you decided to go into the insurance business.
Well, it was a good fit for me at the age of 50. When you're looking for something to do at the age of 50, and you're going and talking to people, and I'm in interview rooms with the individuals that are my children's age, and I'm going, it doesn't look very good here. I don't know whether I can, you know. I had a good friend that was in Aflac, and he just indicated to me, he says, won't you come and interview and so on like this. So I did. Our office is in Lexington, and I had a young lady that interviewed me and gave me the opportunity of working with them. So as of the 1st of January, it will be my 12 years as far as being with them.
And it doesn't sound like you're retiring anytime soon.
No, if I can get up every morning, I'm going to work.
Well, now you're doing your workout every day, so
I am.
You'll be getting even more energetic, John Boyd.
Well, I don't know about the energetic part of it, but I feel better.
Well, and I have to mention your sweet wife and your children while you're on here, because Patricia and your wife, who is retired. Well,
she
although
has
she
retired twice,
right,
and she actually is still going back for a couple days and helping out.
Doing that reading program.
Yes, in the reading program.
Marion County,
yes.
yeah.
And then as far as that you mentioned my children, I have 3 children. My oldest one is Elizabeth. She's married to Aaron Smither. They live in Versailles. My oldest son is Matthew. He and Jill live up on Grundy, real close to the nursing home. If the older individuals remember the old Hutman place, I'm sorry, was it Hutman? No, it wasn't Hutman. Well, I just drew a blank. I'm sorry. But anyway, they live right up by where Calorama is. And anyway, they redid this old home there, and they're in it now. And Elizabeth has 2 children. Charlotte, she is soon to be 2, and Ethan just turned approximately about maybe 3 months old. And Jill and Matthew have 2 children. And their oldest one is John Mark. He will be 3 here in about 3 weeks. And the youngest one is Annie, and she's about 7 months old. And then Luke and Natasha. Natasha is our painter. She does a fantastic job.
Beautiful artist. Yeah.
And they have 2 children. And the oldest one is Logan, and she's 6. And the youngest one is Kennedy, and Kennedy is 6 months old. So I'm a very proud grandfather. Yeah. And my grandfather's name is Papa John.
Ah, I like that.
I don't know whether it's very good right now with what's going on with John Schneider.
Oh, well, yeah. Anyway. But you are a very busy man, and we always loved Reed's Key Market, but I'm glad to see you today, and I wish you well in that insurance business, and enjoy visiting with you all.
I appreciate it so much. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, John Boyd.
Thanks.